Everyone. Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at an exam question on the Treaty of Versailles. We're going to be looking at question 1 on the Conflict and Tension 1918 to 1939 paper, which is the 4-mark source analysis question. 4 marks, 5 minutes in this paper. Okay, so we don't have very much time to analyze this source and look at the actual way to answer the question. Now I'm going to go through what sort of the top exam tips for this question. We're going to have a look at the mark scheme, but before that, the first thing that you should do when you see a cartoon is to annotate it, okay, and link it to your contextual knowledge. Now, this cartoon I did look at very briefly in the previous video when we looked at cartoons, so I'm going to go through that again. So in this question, so first thing you should do when you get into that exam, pencil, pen, highlighter, whatever you've got at your disposal, read the question, read it again, and then read it again, right? Because one of the main things that I see when I've got a student who was 1 or 2 marks off the next level up and we request their papers back, or in a mock when they've got, you know, 2 grades lower than they might have expected, the prime reason is not normally because they don't know their stuff. It's that they didn't read the question, or they just answered the question that they wish was asked rather than the question that was actually asked. Okay, so note the key terms, what you're actually looking for. So source B opposes the Treaty of Versailles. How do you know? Explain your answer using the source and your contextual knowledge. Now, in this question, you can talk about the content and the provenance, or one or the other. You don't have to just do one, you don't have to do both. So let's have a look at the provenance first. The provenance means where's it come from? Author, date, purpose. Okay, so a British, that's important. We know it's from the British perspective. Why would they have this perspective? A British newspaper cartoon about the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, so when it was created. So the fact that it's British is the important part here. The big 4, Clemenceau, Lloyd George, Wilson, and Orlando of Italy are holding the spoon. On the box, it says 4 pills worth millions a box, right? Now, automatically, when I read worth millions a box, I think, right, millions, that's talking about reparations. How much were the reparations? And before I've even begun to think about what my answer is going to talk about, I'm going to jot down my contextual knowledge. So I know, depending on what figure you want to use, that it was 6.6 million pounds, or 132 billion gold marks. Okay, now that I've written that down, I don't need to remember that fact anymore. So it's letting my brain relax a bit and not making me think, oh my God, I've got so much to remember. How am I ever going to remember it? Because I'm going to write it down, right? I know what the question's about. My brain has started thinking, what have I got stored in here about this question? And I'm going to write it down. Right, so peace terms. You've got to swallow it whether you like it or not. Now, here, I know contextually that Germany were not invited into the Paris Peace Conference. And I know that they were forced to sign it. And I know that some members from Germany were killed on their return after signing the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, I know that the big 4 forced Germany into signing this and I know the fact that Germany is squashed on the bottom of his shoe there, that they knew that it was intended to crush Germany, right? How do I know that it opposes the Treaty of Versailles? How do I know that this isn't a positive thing? Well, somebody being force-fed something isn't positive. And for my contextual knowledge, I know that the British people thought that the Treaty of Versailles was too harsh. Right? And I know that because later on in the course, we'll learn that they let Germany get away with quite a lot in the 1930s because they were like, oh, well, the Treaty of Versailles shouldn't have happened anyway. It shouldn't have been that harsh anyway, so let's not punish them. They shouldn't have ever had to pay that much back, or they shouldn't have been forbidden from uniting with Austria, that kind of thing, okay? So we know that that was the British view, so that shows that it opposes Germany. Now, this question is only 5 marks, so you don't need, sorry, only 4 marks, so you don't need everything that we've just written down. That is absolutely more than enough. Now, in an exam situation, if I wasn't talking through this and I was just sat doing it, that would have taken me less than a minute to write. So even though I've only got 5 minutes for this, I'm not going to need that much time because I've got more than enough to talk about now, and it's taken me less than a minute. So I know that I can go into my answer now, knowing exactly what I'm going to write, and I'm not going to be sat there halfway through thinking, oh my God, what am I writing next? And having to go back to the source and looking at it again, because all I need to look at is my notes. Okay, I've not got to analyze at the same time as writing it. I'm doing my thinking, then I'm doing the writing. Okay, let's have a look at some examiners' tips for this. Now, I've got this from the AQA textbook, the Oxford textbook. I went through and wrote down all the examiner tips so I could share it in a document with my students. So this is what I got from there. This is what they say in that textbook. So explain what the source is about and give specific evidence. So say what you see. Now, this exam question isn't particularly hard. It's only 4 marks. Where people fall down on this question the most, in my experience, is they try and turn it into a 16-mark essay, and it's much longer than it needs to, and it may have taken them 10 to 15 minutes to write. Maybe 4 marks, but you can do 4 marks in 4 lines in this question. Okay, so don't make it more complicated than it is. Link the message of the source to your own knowledge. Now, that's exactly what we've done up here. Okay, so you've already done that if you've annotated it first. Refer to the source's provenance and content in your answer. So we've had a look at the provenance up here. We've analysed that here. We've also looked at its content. If the source is complex, try to work out who is in the image. Now, it will normally, hopefully, tell you. Sometimes it might not, which is why you should, as I said in the previous video, look and really spend time looking at as many cartoons as you can to recognise who's in them. What the caption means and why would the cartoonist make the cartoon in the first place. So this is basically just saying, what is the purpose of this cartoon? Okay, now let's just have a look at the mark scheme then. Now you can see, based on how small the mark scheme is, that it isn't a massive answer. This is taken from the 2019 mark scheme for this, whatever the question was, but the question in that year was about the SAR coalfield, so it wasn't relevant to this source. So I've just taken what the levels actually say. So level 1, students identify relevant features in the source and support them with simple factual knowledge and understanding. So if you had said something like, the source shows that Germany is being force-fed a pill, I know that Germany had to sign the Treaty of Versailles even though they didn't want to. That might get you a level 1 answer, probably 1 mark. if you want 3 or 4 marks, you've got to progress from a simple analysis of the source with extended reasoning supported by factual knowledge, excuse me, and understanding related to the features of the source. Now, mark schemes are helpful to an extent. They're quite ambiguous. Teachers find them frustrating as well. Examiners, I am an AQA examiner, and I can tell you that I find them quite frustrating. They're not specific, but what you need to do is make sure that the evidence that you're giving is directly related to that source. Okay, so let's have a look at what we could write then for this question. So I'm just thinking of the best place to do it so I don't need to keep scrolling up and down. I'll do it to the side of it so I can just scroll straight from it. Okay, so if you want to keep focused, then a really good way of making sure that you are answering the question is to use it in your answers. So you can say something like, I'm just going to make that a little bit finer just so it's easier to see. Okay, so I know I'm only going to do 1 point here because we don't have time to write the whole answer. That source B opposes the Treaty of Versailles. Now, if you're going to abbreviate, that's absolutely fine, but you need to write it in full the first time, and then in brackets write TOV, and then from then on you can reference it as TOV because it shows that you know that it's the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles, because I'm going to use this point about Germany not being invited, that should say not invited. We're not invited to the Paris Peace Conference. Excuse me. So, because it shows the Big Four forcing Germany to accept the peace terms. Okay, and then Germany were not invited into the negotiations and would not have agreed and then again you can contextual knowledge about the actual terms. So Germany particularly, excuse my handwriting here, just going to get this fit everything in. So Germany particularly hated the blame clause and a number of German delegates were killed for signing the peace treaty, or the TOV to save time, on their return to Germany. Okay, so we've done, if we go back and we look at our examiner's tips and we see where we've done it, so it shows the Big Four forcing Germany to accept the peace terms. We've said what we've seen. We've said that Germany were not invited into negotiations. We've used our contextual knowledge. We've said that they particularly hated the blame clause, and we've said that they were killed for signing the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, so in terms of how many marks we've got there, if we look down at the mark scheme, we have related the features of the source. I'd say that was probably 3 out of 4 because I've not put the second point in, but we have got into that top level there on that answer. Okay, so don't overcomplicate this question. It really doesn't need to be too difficult. It's 4 marks for a reason. It's getting you warmed up. Think about it in that way. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for you, having a look at that source and that exam question. Each time I do a topic, I'll look into a different exam question so that you've got some knowledge about them all. The big meaty topics in this one, there's only actually 3 separate things for you to have a look at, in terms of, there's the Treaty of Versailles, the League of Nations, and then the road to World War II. So and because there's only 4 questions, they are actually quite limited on what they can ask you, which is brilliant for this one. So the next one in the League of Nations, I'll look at a 16-mark question on the League of Nations. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been useful for you. So please do tune into the next lot of videos, which will be on the League of Nations. So thanks for joining. I'll see you again.